So welcome to the Kipaepae Foundations. Today we'll be speaking about Pilina. Today's February 15, 2022. Our next session is going to be on April the 19th, ʻŌlelo. And I wanted to make mention that if any of the participants attend 4 or more of the sessions, you're eligible to request an overload of $500. So I will be letting you know at the end of the spring semester after April, if you are eligible, if you have attended 4 or more of the sessions, and you would be, and if you would like to request an overload of $500. Okay, thank you, Hoku and Luana. Thank you for teaching us.
Aloha, aloha mai kako, welcome. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you, Joyce, for starting us off. Hoku and I are both excited to be able to share with you folks this afternoon. And thank you for, many of you have come to all of our sessions so far. So mahalo nui for making that time. So I'm gonna go ahead and share screen with you. So, okay, so let's see if I can make it big. So when oh, there it is. Okay, so we're in topic 4, Pilina. Sorry, I think my internet is running a little slow this afternoon. So we're going to just go over our agenda real quick. We are going to practice our Oli. So we're going to practice Oli Aloha as well as Laukanaka, which we learned in our previous sessions. We'll also show you towards the end of the session where you can find the previous session recordings and how you can practice these Oli as well. Hoku's going to talk about what Pilina is, right? Kind of give us some background about the word Pilina and specifically what Pilina means in our culture, right? So culturally, we're going to talk a bit about Moʻokūʻauhau or genealogy this afternoon, and then we will get into the application. So how do we use these things? How do we apply them in the classroom or in our departments, wherever it is that we work on campus and we have influence on campus? How can we then take this ike, this knowledge we've learned today, back to our various areas? So we'll start first with the Oli Aloha. And the Oli Aloha, I think I have the link. Yeah. So at the very top of the slide, you can click on the link to a video and audio recording if you want to practice this. So you can always ho'oma'ama'a or practice on your own as well. So you'll stay muted, which means that you can give them, you don't need to be shame because we're not going to hear you. You can just full force, give your 100%, right? When you Oli. The Oli Aloha is a greeting chant. It's also a welcoming chant. It will be part of our Kipaepae, of the chants that we do when we are welcoming people to our campus. So I'll give the pitch with the word onauna, and then we'll chant together, okay? Onauna pa. O naunai kahala me kalehu ai. He halele huano yana kano e. O kauno ia e ano inei. E li'a nei ho'i o ka hiki mai, a hiki mai no ʻoukou, a hiki pu no me ke aloha. Aloha e, aloha e. Aloha e, Maikai. And then we'll go into our Oli Laukanaka, which was written by Kumukiʻope Raymond. And again, you can click here for the audio and video recording so you can ho'oma'ama'a, you can practice. Now this one involves our hands as well. So we're going to be clapping, upoho, upoho, pa'i. So cup, cup, sorry, wait. Yeah, clap, clap, cup, clap, clap, cup. Yeah, so we're going to clap that way while we oli. So we'll start with the clapping. And pa. Pa kamoa e ku I ke alokanaka la. Laukanaka no na e ku haʻahe o e. E o e na mamo o ka aina aloha la. E aloha I ka aina ko ka hua ho I e. Ho'oulu ia, ho'olau ia, ho'ohua ia la. E ohimai, e hiala ai, e ola mai e. O kako na mamo, o maui a kama, e o. Maikai, it's such a great way to start us off. So I'm going to turn the mahalo for your participation, and I'm going to turn the time over to Hoku to start talking a bit about Pilina.
Mahalo, Luana. And, I would continue to encourage you to practice. Practice makes perfect, or at least practice makes better. So the more we practice, the better we get. And I wanted to just put this thing in your mind. When you see chanters chant, they're not reading from the paper. Yeah? You don't see when chanters chant, they're not reading from a paper. They're chanting from their memory. So I just want to let you know that all of us, every single one of us, had to memorize from paper, just like you're doing. We were not born with these chants in our heads. We had to memorize them as well. So I encourage you to go ahead and continue to memorize and not to think, oh no, they could just do it and it seems so easy. Well, no, we had to memorize just like everybody else and memorize the melody and memorize the words. So please go right ahead. Don't be shy. Okay, so what is Pilina? Well, literally, Pilina means association, relationship, union, connection, meeting, joining, adhering, and fitting. There is a little phrase that says, He Pilina vehena ole, an unseverable relationship. We should have known this yesterday, this phrase, because yesterday was Valentine's Day. Yeah? So if you have somebody that you wanted to tell, I'm yours forever and ever and ever, that would have been the phrase, He pilina vehena ole, an unseverable relationship. Nobody can break us apart. Yep. Okay. Having and developing Pilina is an important part of Hawaiian culture. Our lives were connected somehow, and these relationships with each other were fostered and encouraged always. If you think about living on an island, getting along and having connective relationships were important to survival and good living. Those values, attitudes, and attributes that made living well here were connected through Pilina. It is important to us to make connections. Oftentimes when we meet somebody for the first time, we must try to find ways that we connect. After the general, oh, nice to meet you, the conversation usually turns to how we might be connected. Things like, Where do you live? What school did you go to? Where do you work? All begin to unfold. For those not accustomed to this inquiry, it might seem pretty nosy. But for us, it is a way to connect to you on a personal level. Even if it ends up being something like this. Oh, you come from San Francisco. My hula sister went to college in San Francisco. Are you familiar with San Francisco State University? Then the conversation continues. The connection has been made and we can move on. If the connection is not made, we keep trying to make it. We keep trying to say, oh, I had an uncle that went to Baldwin High School. Oh, great. Yeah, my sister's cousin went to Baldwin High School also. Okay, then the connection is made. We can move on. The connection must always be made. Pilina happens with people, places, organizations, and is a fundamental part of Hawaiian culture and island living. Next slide, please. Ike aku, ike mai, kokua aku, kokua mai, pela ihola, kanohona, ohana. This means recognize and be recognized, help and be helped. Thus is family life. The single most important group in Hawaiian culture was the family. It is the family that provides all the support needed to prosper in Hawaiian culture. The family is where the person's life can thrive. Now, I have to preface this by saying that this is a traditional Hawaiian family. Some of these behaviors and practices are no longer done in some contemporary families because we have been influenced by thoughts and beliefs that do not align with traditional Hawaiian values and behaviors. So while I say this for many Hawaiian and local families, it might not be for everyone. So the first section, ike aku, ike mai. In many Hawaiian families, there are certain times when you have to garu go to and attend gatherings. Gotta have to go. If you're invited to a family member's wedding, baby party, you need to be there. If someone close to the family passes, you have to go to the funeral. These are all times and places that we say, I am connected to these people. I recognize our Pilina. You know, when I was growing up, I didn't like going to funerals. It's not one of my favorite places to go, but I used to have to take my auntie. So I went because she gotta go. But then I learned to really appreciate going to funerals with my auntie, because then I found out what is the Pilina of all these people in this room. Because she would know, oh, you see this one, okay, that's the second wife, and they had 3 children, and you see the 3 over there, that's the 3 children that came from the second wife, the first wife, you know. So you get the scoops of the Pilina that is happening in this occasion. So there's certain gotta have to go, and usually weddings, baby parties, and funerals are those places because it is there that you say, I have connection, I have Pilina to these people. Kokua aku, kokua mai. Helping is an important part of Hawaiian culture. Kokua aku, to help. Kokua mai, to receive help. To kokua is an attribute that is fostered in people at a very young age. You must kokua wherever and whenever you can. It is a commonly held belief that everybody doing a little bit will make the work lighter for all. Once again, to benefit the family and therefore the community, everyone must kokua. Everyone must help. A prime example of this is the family party, whether it's a baby party, a retirement party, a wedding party, or any kind of celebration. Everyone is expected to help. Bring tables, chairs, tents, paper products, drinks, decorations, and of course, food. When I was growing up, everyone made the food. They rarely bought anything, even down to the cakes and desserts. It was almost always made by someone. The men and older boy cousins did the imu and the meat. So in other words, they took care of the fire. The aunties and older girl cousins made the supplemental foods and salads. The teenagers collected plants and flowers and helped decorate. And the little kids tried to stay out of the way. Everyone worked together to produce a party that everyone enjoyed and took pride in because they contributed to everybody's happiness. They loved when they said, oh, this kalua pig is so delicious, just right salt. Or, oh, this chicken long rice must have been Auntie who made this. I can know her chicken long rice anywhere. It was the joy in bringing joy to people when they ate. So we have been indoctrinated to think, however, that it is too much work. But I say, how will the family know how to do these things if we don't do them? How are we gonna know how to make Auntie's famous chicken long rice if we don't work beside her to make it? There is an ʻŌlelo Noʻeau that says, mai maka'u kahana, maka'u kamoloa. And that means don't be afraid of work, be afraid of laziness. If we remember our community connections where our chancellor talked about making his ulu, and he showed how to make imu and how his brother, his cousins, and the sons were all there learning how to make imu. That is priceless. And that is what Pilina does, because here are these men who are drawn together by this activity. Then the last section of this ʻŌlelo Noʻeau says, Pela ihola kanohona ohana. Such is family life. This is what family life and living well in Hawaii is all about. Recognize and be recognized, help and be helped. Such is family life. And such is a life where service and goodwill is a part of living well. Next slide, please.
Mahalo hoku. That was so great. That brought up so many memories for me, you know, growing up. And you're absolutely right. We always, one auntie that make the ono salad, you know, the potato mac or whatever it is. And it is a dying tradition. You know, we have caterers now that we hire to come in and do the food. And as we're preparing for my son's wedding next week, we've really, you know, taken on a lot of that kuleana, and everybody has their different responsibilities. And so I'm glad to see that our ohana is doing that again, not just, you know, hiring people to come in and do it, but doing it together as a family makes such a huge difference. So mahalo nui, thank you for sharing that with us. And the building of Pilina, which is so important. Yeah. In this next ʻŌlelo Noʻeau, it says, e pū paʻakai kākou. So it's a very simple ʻŌlelo Noʻeau, just a few words in there. If we look at this word here, paʻakai is the word for salt. Yeah, kākou is inclusive of everyone. Pū is this idea of doing something together. E pū paʻakai kākou literally means let us partake of salt together. Yeah, but as we look a little bit deeper into this ʻŌlelo Noʻeau, we realize that what we are saying is come and share some food with me. And the reason paʻakai is there is because often that's what had maybe a little bit of salt and fish, or maybe a little bit of poi, right? And whatever that person had was shared generously. So in our previous session, when we talked about hoʻokipa, we were talking a bit about hoʻokipa, how we entertain people, how we hospitable, how we demonstrate hospitality, right, to our guests. And when we were talking about that, we were mentioning how when you go to somebody's house, one of the first things that they're going to say is, "You like eat? Yeah, did you eat?" And even if you say, "Oh yeah, I just ate," come inside, I'm going to feed you. Yeah, is the next thing said. And it doesn't matter if you just ate and you're full, you need to go in and you need to sit down and you need to pū paʻakai, you need to eat together. And the reason for that is this action of eating together is one of the best ways to build pilina, right? This is the reason we host luncheons or we have dinner parties. It's all surrounded by meaʻai, by food, which allows us to enjoy this sustenance. But beyond that, we talk story. We start to get to know each other better. We are able to ask questions about who the person is that we're talking story with, who their family is, where they come from. All of this is part of building that pilina. And sometimes food is secondary, right? How the food is perhaps is secondary. It could be something as simple as some fish and salt, or eating poi together, something very simple. What is important is the closeness that is shared and the pilina that is built. Now, eating together is how we show our aloha, right? How we show our love, how we show that we care for someone. When we want to malama or take care of people we love, that we feel close with, we feed them. So this is an important part of our culture, and important in many cultures. So although on the surface, e pū paʻakai kākou may seem, literally, the literal interpretation is just let us partake of salt. It has so much depth to it. Often when you're at a party and it's time to eat, you'll hear this saying, e pū paʻakai kākou, and everyone knows it's time to eat. We say this in our ohana when it's time to eat. And it's once we hear this saying, we know it's time to sit down and eat, but more so, we know it's time to start to build that pilina. So eating together, again, is an important part of Kipaepae. And without COVID, eating would definitely be a part of our Kipaepae. After we meet, after we greet each other, after we share the formalities of a Kipaepae, it would be often followed up with some meaʻai, right? We would sit together and eat. And hopefully we can get to a time soon where that can be part of our Kipaepae once again. Okay. All right, so now we're going to talk a little bit about Moʻokūʻauhau, which is genealogy. And so I'm going to have Hōkū start us off, and then I'll jump in.
Unmute Hōkū. Okay, Moʻokūʻauhau is a genealogical succession, like a pedigree. It is who you come from. This is also important in Hawaiian culture because our pilina, or connection to our ancestors, not only connects us to people, but also to places. It grounds us to those that came before us, and to the places that they frequented and called home. Sometimes you hear the term as aina kupuna, that aina, that land that your ancestors were from. It gives us great comfort to know that we are part of a continuum that will flow through us and onto our children and those who follow. If we have no children, we often have nieces, nephews, and cousins that will be part of that continuum. It is a common thought in Hawaiian culture that we are because of others, and those others begin with our kupuna. So I'll do my moʻokūʻauhau on my maternal grandmother's side. Yeah. O keia ka moʻokūʻauhau o ka ʻohana kai anui. O ka ipu male o ka hekili ke kane, o ka hiehie o ka lani ka wahine. Noho pūlau wa a hanau ia o kai anui. O kai anui ke kane o naʻuala ka wahine. Noho pūlau wa a hanau ia o Sam ka aihue kai anui. O Sam ka aihue kai anui ke kane, o ulalia ke auheʻe ka wahine. Noho pūlau wa a hanau ia o Aida Pakulani ka aihue kai anui. O Aida Pakulani ka aihue kai anui ka wahine. O Henry Dwyer ke ao long ke kane. Noho pūlau wa a hanau ia o Leana i ka rose lani o Maui long. O Leana i ka rose lani o Maui long ka wahine. O Harry hiʻilea liʻi Holt ke kane. Noho pūlau wa a hanau ia o Hōkūlani haila hiʻilea liʻi Holt. O wau o Hōkūlani. O keia ka moʻokūʻauhau o ka ʻohana kai anui. E ola.
E ola.
Each time I do my moʻokūʻauhau, I think about my ancestors and their decision to have children. If they didn't, I would not exist. I owe my existence to my ancestors, and for that, I am grateful. Whether your upbringing was good, bad, or indifferent, it got you here, and it is who you are. When you say your moʻokūʻauhau, you also give others the opportunity to discover if there are commonalities. Are some of the names recognizable? Might we be ohana too? Maybe we know that same person, and now the Pilina is established. Now that connection. Or you might hear, I know a name similar from that, but it was in Kawaʻa. And then you go, yes, my tutu man was from Kawaʻa. Yes, maybe we are ohana. So having a moʻokūʻauhau as family, ohana moʻokūʻauhau can connect you to others. We also use the term moʻokūʻauhau for other kind of succession or connective pieces. In hula, we often have what we call the moʻokūʻauhau of this hula. A hula that might have been taught to you by your kumuhula, who was taught to them by their kumuhula, who was taught to them by their kumuhula. And thus this hula that you have is 4, 5 generations long, and it comes to you. And you then will have the honor to continue that genealogical connection into your students. So moʻokūʻauhau can also be a succession of other things. Yeah, for us in hula, it often has to do with the succession of particular hula that we do. Luana?
E kai mahalo hoku. And mahalo for sharing your moʻokūʻauhau with us. So a common practice is when someone shares their moʻokūʻauhau at the end, when they say that last line, eola, everyone who hears repeats, says, yeah, eola. And what that means, just using those words, we're saying that we give life to that genealogy. We are using the mana of our leo to ensure that genealogy continues, that there's always ola or life connected to it. So when you hear someone do their genealogy, when they say eola at the end, say eola. Yeah. So that's one of our cultural practices. Now, it's interesting because as Hawaiians, we are always looking for ways to connect with people. It's so interesting. And not all cultures do that, right? When we meet someone, we immediately want to know who they are, who they come from, who's their kupuna, where they live, all of these questions. And that's because Pilina is so important. Building the relationship is so important. And so part of that, what Hoku is mentioning, is when we hear the moʻokūʻauhau, we're listening. Of course, it honors that lineage, but we're also listening for where do we connect? Yeah, how do we connect? Even if it isn't a familial connection, it might be we grew up together, or my parents lived in the same place that your parents lived, or any way to connect, right? Which really shows us that Pilina is such an important part of our culture. Yeah. So I am going to share with you a Moʻokūʻauhau template, and this template has my Moʻokūʻauhau in it, but I'm also going to show you how you can put your Moʻokūʻauhau into this template. So usually I have the page. Okay, so there are lots of ways that you can do your Moʻokūʻauhau. Now, there are different templates, layouts, formats, you might say, that are used. It can be done in an Oli style. It can be recited the way that Hoku recited her Moʻokūʻauhau. It can be very elaborate. Now, the Moʻokūʻauhau for the ali'i, for the high chiefs, were very elaborate. It described the characteristics of that ali'i. It also mentioned things that they wanted to manifest into that ali'i's life, right? The way they want this ali'i to be or to live their life was worked into the words of the Moʻokūʻauhau. You can, aside from the names, you can have where they come from, their aina, right? The place where they were born, or the place that the family is connected to. So again, it can be very simple, like what I'm going to show you today, or it can be more elaborate. And the more command you have of ʻŌlelo Hawaii, the more understanding you have of Moʻokūʻauhau, the more elaborate you can get as well. And so today we're just going to learn a very simple format. Now, one more thing I want to mention is another thing that makes Moʻokūʻauhau important is that in traditional times, this determined your status in society. And so it was very important to know your genealogy, your Moʻokūʻauhau. And I remember there's a great video of Kumuhula Sai Bridges, who is a great historian and a very, very, I don't even know the word to describe it, detailed, very, just a very good genealogist. Yeah, like I can't find a right descriptor because he's so good at it, maybe even an expert at Moʻokūʻauhau. And what he said in the video is Moʻokūʻauhau was important to remember, so much so that his grandmother made them recite their Moʻokūʻauhau. I believe it was before they went to bed at night. They had to recite their Moʻokūʻauhau. And he said, Moʻokūʻauhau is what separates us from animals, right? Animals may not have, well, some animals have a pedigree, right? We know that, but it separates us. And when we are reciting these names of our ancestors, we are bringing honor to them. We're reminding ourselves of the kuleana, the responsibility we have to them, right? To continue that legacy, to bring pride to our ancestors. And so if you have a chance, you can look him up on YouTube. He does a great 7-minute video. I use it in a lot of my classes because he does just a really good job in explaining Moʻokūʻauhau and the different levels. He goes pretty deep into Moʻokūʻauhau. So if you have an opportunity to check that out, check that out. So today we're going to be simple because you may be just doing this for the first time. One more thing I want to talk about before I get into my Moʻokūʻauhau is that we have different family dynamics today, right? And these dynamics existed in our traditional societies as well, right? It may not be the typical mother, father, child born, mother, father, child born. There may be puka. There may be things that we don't know. There may be names that we don't know how to fill in those places. Whatever your genealogy is, it is your moʻokūʻauhau. It is your genealogy. Who you identify as your ohana. These are the names that you include in your genealogy. So when I do this with my students, sometimes we have to have a dialogue about the different dynamics. And what I realized is for some people, doing an activity like this can bring up trauma, can bring up feelings of anxious feelings, can bring up anxieties, can bring up things that are unpleasant. So it's always important when we do this, and if you choose to do something like this with your students, to acknowledge that and acknowledge that your family is who you decide your family is. Yes, we have the traditional ohana, but maybe the father figure in your life isn't your blood biological father figure. A'ole pilikia. You put in the names that who you look to as being your ohana. So I want to make sure that people feel comfortable with that. So here, I'm just doing my genealogy to my grandparents on both sides. So I start off here with my paternal side. And for me, I like to start with the paternal and then the maternal. And for me, that is the ku and the hina. That is how I learned genealogy. That's the flow of genealogy. So I start with my paternal side. So here, these are my paternal grandparents. O Harold, Oli, Austin, Kekane. That's grandfather on your father's side. O Shirley, Westman, Kawahine. Grandmother on my father's side. Nohopulaua, Ahanauia, O Richard, Keith, Austin, Hekane. So here, Nohopulaua is the idea that they live together. They have this relationship together. Ahanauia, and born from that relationship is, and here's the person, here's my father, O Richard, Keith, Austin, Hekane. Yeah, and then giving the gender of that person as well. Then I go to my maternal grandparents, O Stephen Joseph Medeiros Kekane, so grandfather on your mother's side, O Mary Momi Kaʻililaʻau Kauai Kawahine, this is my grandmother on my maternal side, Nohopulaua Ahanauia, O Stephanie Marie Medeiros Hewahine. So this is now my mother. Yeah. Now I bring in my father, O Richard Keith Austin Kekane, and then my mother, O Stephanie Marie Medeiros Kawahine, Nohopulaua Ahanauia, O Luana Leanne Austin Hewahine. So here, this is me. And I use maiden names. Eia ka moʻokūʻauhau o ka ohana. And here you can choose which name, right? So I have o ka ohana Austin because I'm doing my genealogy and using my name prior to marriage, yeah? But you can choose the name that you want to put here. So sometimes people will do just one side of the ohana, your whole paternal side, and then your whole maternal side, right? And then that way you can choose the ohana name that you want to place here. So eia ka moʻokūʻauhau, here is here is the genealogy of the Olsten family, or whatever the family name is filled in here. So I'll adjust this a little bit and put some blanks in it so you know how to fill in the blanks with your ohana names. And then at the end, the person says eola, which we talked about a little earlier, and the crowd, the audience, whoever's there, the family responds back eola. Yeah, and it's such a beautiful process. One of the places that we see this being done frequently now is at the immersion, Hawaiian language immersion graduations. And I'm really grateful that they require the students and their parents to recite their genealogy, because prior to that, you didn't see this very often, especially in public. You didn't hear people's genealogy. And so the Papahana Kaya Puni, the Hawaiian Immersion Program, has done a really good thing in making this part of the graduation for the haumana, for the students. And whether you speak Hawaiian or not, the parents get up there and recite the Moʻokūʻauhau. And it can be very stressful for parents who aren't ma'a. Yeah, I know my husband was terrified, but you get up there, you ho'oma'a, you practice beforehand, and you get up there and you do it. And it doesn't matter if the names are, look at mine, Portuguese names, Hawaiian names, Swedish names in that genealogy. You put the names in as they are, and you honor that kupuna, that ancestor. And so that has been a really great part of the immersion legacy and tradition. And I know Lei and other people, Hoku, have had to do that with our children as they graduate. And hearing it, the crowd, you can just feel the mana. You can feel when you do the genealogy, I feel my kupuna come. I feel them come and stand there with me. Yeah, I get chicken skin when I say that. And that's part of the power of our voice. When we recite these names, they come and they stand with us. Yes,
Luana. Yeah. So in our ohana, when Luana was talking about some of the other ways that you can use the moʻokūʻauhau, in our ohana, we also use them for weddings. Yeah, you reminded me about weddings because Baba and I am getting married, and weddings, because here the bride and the groom are coming together to create a family. So their families are coming for them and with them to come together to then begin their own family. So we often in our ohana do moʻokūʻauhau for weddings. We also do it for funerals, as we recognize this ohana member and how they fit into the ohana. And my cousins have done them for baptisms, because here is this child that is now having themselves be presented to the rest of the world. So, where and how moʻokūʻauhau can function in your life and in the life of your ohana is how you would like to. And like Luana says, I agree with her wholeheartedly that when you do your moʻokūʻauhau, you really do feel that your ohana have come. They have heard their names and they have come there to stand with you, whether it's for a wedding, a graduation, a funeral, or a child's baptism, a person's baptism. The family has come to witness, and there is no greater feeling than that. Thank you, Luana.
Definitely. Yeah. Thank you so much, Hoku, for sharing that. So again, when you get the slides, when the slides are shared with you, this will, you can use my genealogy as kind of your outline, but I will have the page with the lines where you fill in the blanks with your ohana names. And then if it's something that you want to do with your family, this can be a great activity to do with your ohana and have them fill in the names, your children or grandchildren fill in the names and start to learn it. And just just going to your grandparents 2 generations back is a great start. Now, we're doing Moʻokūʻauhau for my son's wedding next week. And for us, we go about 6 generations back with our genealogy. And so again, that's a big kuleana, right? For the person that has to do the genealogy and get all those names correct. But we can start small with baby steps, just going back to grandparents or who you know, and you fill in the blanks. So that will be available to you. All right. So the last thing we want to talk about is building Pilina in the classroom. So how do we take what we've learned today and apply it into the classroom? And also how we might be able to discover things that we already do, that all we need to do now is identify this to our students, to our co-workers, whoever it is that we're working with, that this is building Pilina. So there may be activities you already do that build Pilina, but identifying it and using the word Pilina is important as well. So I'll share one of the things I do in all of my classes, and that is, it's called the Aloha Is lesson. And it is based on Kupuna Pilahi Paki's interpretation of the word aloha, in which she took the 5 letters in the word aloha and assigned each letter a value. So the first A is akahai, kindness, the L, lokahi, unity, the O, olu, being agreeable, pleasant, and the H, ha'aha'a, humility, and then the last A, ahonui, or patience. So I introduced the lesson, and there are great resources online that you can use if you want to talk about Kupuna Pilahi Paki. There's even a short video clip of her that you can play for your students, and I'm happy to provide that when we share the slides with you. But I introduce the lesson, I introduce each of the values, and then I have my students break up into groups. If we're online on Zoom, they go into breakout rooms. If we're in person, they break out into groups, and I give them one of the values, and they discuss that value. They discuss how they can use this value in our classroom. How will this value help them when they are doing group activities? And then how can they then use this value in their lives and share it with their ohana? And so they talk, they discuss, and then we come back as a group, we share out, and then that's followed up with a reflection. So they do a reflection about the value that they were assigned and share. What was that process like? What did you learn from this activity? So it's a simple activity, and I do it usually in the second class so that we can start to build Pilina right away, right? And it allows the students to talk story. It allows them to talk about values that are important. And a lot of times through values, people make connections, even if they maybe aren't Hawaiian, right? They can make connections with their own cultures as well. So that's one simple, easy activity. And I'm happy to share more with those of you who might be interested in doing that in your classroom, department, work area, whatever it may be. And then I'm going to have Hoku share with us as well.
So, building Pilina in the classroom, often, if you've been listening, often Pilina means to find commonalities. Yeah, to find that commonality between 2-3 people, the classroom, and then to have those commonalities be the links to one another. So there are, all kinds of things you can look up in activities to do that. But one of the things that I do is I have each of them tell their name, first, middle, and last name, and either what their name means or where it comes from. And this way, people become real. Yeah, their classmates become real people, not just the girl in the third row in the back corner where she's sitting, but they become real people. For example, I'll use the example and I'll tell them, okay, you give your first, middle, and last name, and then you tell us either what it means or where it came from. And then if a student says, oh, I don't know, then you say, okay, now you have homework to go and ask your mom, your dad, your kupuna, your auntie, where did this name come from? And I want to say this before I move on. You'd be surprised how many people's names are taken from songs, or they're more than once. You're going to crack up. More than once, somebody has said this is their dad's old girlfriend's name. And I said, your mother was happy with that. Yeah, I guess so. Anyway, I'll use me as an example. Okay, my name is Hōkūlani Haila Hiʻilea Holt. I said, first of all, my name, my dad's name, my sister's name, my half-brother's name, all have the same initials, H, H, H. And that is because of what my dad wanted. Same initials, don't have to change the silverware or the towels. So we all had names that began with H. So Hōkūlani means heavenly star. Haila is a Gaelic name that my dad read when he was reading a book, happened to have H in it. He named me Haila. And then Hiʻilea is an ancestral name that comes from my great-great-grandfather. There is a Hiʻilea in every generation since the first Hiʻilea, which means to cherish the chief's lei. So that was their function in traditional Hawaii, is they were the caretakers of the king's featherwork. And so anybody know anything about that? That means it was a position that was valued because their featherwork maintained the ali'i's mana in it. And so they had to have someone who was trusted and valued in order to take care of the items that were made out of feather. And then Holt is, the first Holt came from Eastern United States by way of England. And Robert William Holt was the first Holt that landed on Oahu, and boom, the rest of us happened after that. So in this way, people begin to know their classmates as people. Yeah, not just not seeing them at all. So that's one of the activities we use to build Pilina, is to build a recognition that these are real people with real stories and real lives that they come from. Mahalo, Luana.
Maika'i mahalo. That's a great one. I love that. Yeah. And it's just interesting when you find out, right, the origin of your name. And perhaps even for some students, yeah, like you said, they got to go find out, right? So even better, they get homework. So we're going to pause. Oh, so a couple of things, questions, of course, if you have any questions, we have a few minutes left, but we also want to tell you that there's going to be an opportunity for us to actually do a Kipaepae, a real life Kipaepae on March 8th at 8 a.m. We're going to meet in the front of the Ka'aike building in front of the mural, and we will be doing this welcome for the, is it, I don't know, WSCUC, but what is it? WSCUC? I don't know.
Yeah. WSCUC. WSCUC.
For the accreditation team.
Yeah. Those guys. Yeah.
So we'll be doing a Kipaepae for them, and we would like to have as many people as possible join us. So we're going to do exactly the outline of what we have practiced here. So Oli Aloha, we'll do the Oli, the Laukanaka. Then we will have an ʻŌlelo Noʻeau and a real brief haʻi ʻŌlelo. And then I think that's it, right? So very short, probably 10 minutes, right? So we want to be there prior to 8 a.m. And we'll do the Kipaepae right at 8 a.m. when Louis brings over the folks who are joining us that day. So we will share more information about that with you. And then any questions?
No, I'm going to just say, gang, don't be scared now. Don't be scared now, because we've been practicing our Oli. You have the video, you have the music, the vocals. We've been practicing our Laukanaka. And so don't be scared now. You can.
And we'll be there to lead you. So you can find comfort in us being there to lead you, right? So we'll share more info about that with you. And then are there any questions?
I wanted to mention again about the overload. So everyone here is eligible for an overload. And so if you have any questions about that, if you attend 4 out of the 6, you qualify to receive an overload of $500 for these Kipaepae Foundation sessions that we've had in the fall and then also in the spring. Just let me know if you have any questions about that. We have one more to go in April. So if you're at the 3 session mark, please come in April.
Any other questions?
So this slide has the link to all of the previous sessions that we've done, the recordings. So when you get the slides, you'll have that. Joyce has also sent that out, the direct link. And then, we have one more, haʻi ʻŌlelo, which we'll be doing in April. And then we will share more information as we begin the planning stages of the summer intensive learning sessions as well. I think, Oya Valeno, I think that's it for us for today. So mahalo nui. Thank you to each of you for joining us. And if you